Hello, everyone. How are you doing? This is Daryl Guberman. I am the CEO of Guberman PMC LLC, a quality consulting firm here in Connecticut. We've been open now for 12 years. My background is aerospace, medical implants, medical materials, printing, and plastic distribution, where I dealt with every industry under the sun. I've been open now, as I said, for 12 years, assisting companies in manufacture and quality and ISO certification, implementation, and thoroughly assisting them throughout their manufacturing processes if needed. We are an expert in NADCAP certification, which is a certification that has the larger OEMs, which are the original equipment manufacturers like Lockheed and Boeing. Boeing is notorious for this. They don't have to send in any inspectors into these companies who are doing heat treat, radiography, non-destructive testing, penetrant inspection, etc., and also prime and paint, welding, etc. They just send PRI, which is Professional Resource Institute. They're the only ones that can issue the NADCAP certification. But anyway, today's video is very important. I received a wonderful letter because I put out a video about my hypothesis about the hesitation in Israel concerning quality, concerning all this mess. But that's for another video. You'll find that video on my YouTube channel, Daryl Guberman. So I received a wonderful letter from a food safety guy who's been following me for many years, and I've been exposing the factor of ANSI-ANAB and their criminal activities, and they are criminal because they have both federal agencies and corporations on board. This video is who is responsible for manufacturing quality? QA expert Daryl Guberman explains. The large OEMs, and for those of you who don't know that, it's the original equipment manufacturer, are forcing and pushing their suppliers to use these accreditation bodies on which they sit on their accreditation body boards. And that's it. So these same OEMs sit on the accreditation body, right over by the accreditation bodies that they use, and there are 7 different registrars on this board, you will see, and it's absolutely deplorable. In 2022, I applied for director at large on ANSI's board, and you will see and hear for your first time, possibly, the management style, the mantra that ANSI uses, and guess what? The quality that all of these OEMs appear to produce. You have Boeing, who fudge documentation. You have Pfizer and Johnson & Johnson skipping quality processes and standards. And by the way, these corporations all sit on ANSI. You also have Lockheed Martin after their 801st F-35. They still have issues up to and including loss of aircraft and loss of pilot. They also have problems with the LCS Littoral battleship. And it's absolutely disgusting. So you have Lockheed, 801st ship, done. Boeing skipping quality process, actually fudging documentation along with their steel manufacturer, Kobe Steel. They were caught fudging documentation too. And you have Johnson & Johnson and Pfizer, and they all sit there right over by the FDA, FAA, CDC, NIH, USDA, all of it. And let's continue. I will read the letter that this wonderful guy sent us. And this is one of many that I've received concerning quality and it being out of control. And here it goes. They use the term voluntary. Voluntary consensus stances, voluntary. You'll find out that it's not voluntary. They use the word impartial. And embedded in all of this mess, they use a lot of acronyms. And this is for you, business owners, obfuscation. And here it is. Stop the video. I'm not going to read to the bottom. I will be quiet for a second. You can read it. And now here, this came off of ANAB's website. Is your certificate accredited? If your certificate was issued by an ANAB accredited certification body, that's like a registrar, DNV, TUV, BSI, BVQI, Perry Johnson, ABS, etc., DQS, etc., etc. And there's 7 different registrars that sit right on ANSI's board, right over by ANAB, who they use as the logo. Several years back, Keith Greenaway, his father Skip Greenaway, who's the president of Eagle Registrar, and his son was the CEO of ANAB. So you have father and son. Isn't that a tender moment? In 2013, I gave a speech at the American Society for Quality. A Region 3 director was there, and Mr. David Levy. At that time, ANAB was owned by 2 organizations, 50-50. And by the way, ASQ, American Society for Quality, also sat at that time and today on ANSI's board. So you have ANSI that owned ANAB 50%, and you have ANAB and also ANSI that sat and owned ANAB, the American National Crediting Board, 50%. So you had 100%. This is what Mr. Levy said. He said, there's no restriction on you doing business unaccredited or accredited. And as I said, ANAB has no problem with what you're doing. In fact, we support you, sir. I didn't need their support. I didn't need their support because I knew what they were all about. And this is what came right off the ANAB website. Is accreditation mandatory? Accreditation is voluntary. Accreditation by ANAB provides an exemplary level of credibility, integrity, and trust. And I'm going to show you. Exemplary. Well, Pfizer skip quality processes and standards. They sit right over on ANSI, right over by ANAB. That was exemplary, wasn't it? You have Johnson & Johnson, who skipped quality processes, had to have recalls, all the rest of that. And they showed exemplary quality. It comes right off of ANAB, their accreditation body, that they sit right by on ANSI. Then you have Lockheed Martin, who after their 801st ship, F-35, they're still producing crap. Loss of aircraft, loss of pilot. And then you have Boeing showing exemplary quality. Accreditation by ANAB provides exemplary level of credibility, integrity, and trust. While Boeing fudging documentation along with their steel supplier, metal supplier, Kobe Steel. And this is what Randy said. Randy invited us to join. Now that was 2013 by Dave Levy, Region 3 director. In 2016, Randy invited us and said it's all voluntary. Well, I'm going to show you 2 things that tell you that it's not voluntary. We did not go with joining either ANAB or the IAF because at the time, the IAF was controlled by a communist Chinese national, Zhao Jinwu, who at the time was also the chief executive of the China National Accreditation Services, who was the accreditation body, that certified the Wuhan lab in China that released the COVID virus, because we have right here testimony of a Miss Pamela Sale, the Vice President of Quality for Laboratory Certification, that admits that there is no protocol in laboratory certification. Unbelievable. This came off the IAF website. The primary purpose of the IAF is twofold. Firstly, it is to ensure accreditation bodies members are accredited bodies that are competent to be able to undertake any sort of subjective conflicts of interest. Well, they already have. I'm not going to read you this horseshit, but look what it says. Mandate, I'll gladly send you this. Remember what Randy says? Everything is voluntary. Let me bring him on. Randy, I know you're out of the quality community. You're probably under the dirt, so to speak. So, doing your dirty work. But mandate, you said to me, you invited me, and you said everything's voluntary. Well, IAF, which at the time you were when you said that, you were the technical advisor of ANAB, and also the principal on the IAF, principal and treasurer on the IAF tax report. And here we go again. The International Automotive Task Force mandates, do you see that? Mandates that those organizations have to be, here goes. Effective December 31st, 2017, organizations that are IATF 16949 customers will be required to hold a certificate from certification body registrar that is part of the International Accreditation for a Multilateral Agreement. And sitting on there is Ford, GM, all these recalls. You hear it. Ford 2 weeks ago had an 875,000 recall. Is that showing exemplary quality, ladies and gentlemen? Your certificate by ANAB is compromised by their own words. And this is what Randy said. Beautiful. Look at the red. Randy, when he was vice president of ANAB in 2014, he was the chairman and principal on the IF tax report. He said, "We are not operating under any governmental regulatory authority with the exception of being a legal entity," okay? And you're gonna find out that you have federal agencies and corporations on board. So let's go a little bit further. We have NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, which is part of the Department of Commerce that sits on ANSI's board, okay? They have an organization called the NIST MEP, which is 50 strong throughout the United States. The National Institute of Standards and Technology Manufacturing Extension Partnership. They get both federal and state money. And you want to know why manufacturing is so poor? Because 65% of that money goes to pay their management and personnel. We don't make this up. And you know how Randy said we're non-governmental? Well, here's somebody getting paid by the organization, ANSI. There is Gordon Gillerman, who is getting paid at that time $120,000, and it was a royalty payment. We have the definition in there. You have now the Department of Homeland Security. Okay, Department of Homeland Security sat and sits on ANSI's board. You have a Mr. Philip Masterson, Executive Director, Office Standards, U.S. Department of Homeland Security. That's the way ANSI-ANAB gets into our government and fucks it up. Sorry about the F word. That's a quality term. And here it is. You have the factor, okay, in 2017 that this is page 1 of the Department of Homeland Security. In 2018, same thing, in April, you have this, which is still this page 1 on the Department of Homeland Security. On page 2, you have this. Oh, sorry for the glare. You have it called out a private enterprise on the Department of Homeland Security's governmental website, Randy Doherty. At that time, he was a technical advisor on ANAB. And as you can see, he's registered as the vice president. Boy, they changed titles like turn it on to water. And when I exposed it, this is page 2. Okay, several months later, this is page 1. I exposed it, page 2, that, you know, that's like having Guberman PMC sitting on the DHS. Unbelievable. This is what a royalty payment is, ladies and gentlemen. I don't want to waste your time, but you can stop the video and look what that royalty means. Now we go into the nuts and bolts of the factor. You have ANSI, the American National Standards Institute, is a private, not-for-profit, non-governmental corporation. And people think that it's in the government. Of course, they got 2 people who are getting paid from the government, not only from ANSI, but also their federal salaries. So they're double dipping, ladies and gentlemen, and business owners. They have federal agencies and corporations on board. In 2015, this is the reason why I didn't join. When Randy asked me in that letter to join either ANAB or IAF, how could I as a proud American? Here's this guy. 2015, a year before, okay, he asked me, you have Randy Doherty. At that time, he was the vice president of ANAB, chairman and principal on the IF International Accreditation Forum Incorporated in Delaware. He handed over leadership to this communist Chinese national, Zhao Jinwu, who is also, at that time, the chairman, actually the chief executive of the China National Accreditation Services in Beijing, China. Communist. Isn't that nice? And he was given control of an American company where Lockheed sat. Here's an expose of an article that Randy was quoted in saying, congratulations to Zhao Jinwu. He's been involved with our quality since 1994. Mazel tov. Yeah, right. Xi Jinping, we have a special guest, Xi Jinping. Zhao Jinwu, and you have Xi Jinping, he has told Zhao Jinwu, he is mandated by the communist country China to take our data through the China National Intelligence Law, Article number 7. And guess what? When Randy was being advertised on 2017, you still had Zhao Jinwu being the CEO and chairman of the IAF. Is there espionage here? Oh no, they're just shaking hands. We don't know, do we? He was sitting on the Department of Homeland Security. Ladies and gentlemen, that does not make me feel secure. Does it make you? You have the 7 registrars, as I told you, that sit right over by the accreditation body, ANAB. Okay, ANAB. Just wait, it gets better. You have the IAF and ILAC, the International Laboratory Accreditation Cooperation, and the which is in Australia, and you have IF, which is the International Accreditation Forum. They are sister organizations. You have Randy Doherty, who said in this email when he was the vice president of ANAB, the chairman of the IAF, he said that an IAF MLA, which is a multilateral agreement organization, and an IAF MRA, which is a multi-regional agreement organization, is equivalent in accreditation to ANAB. So if so, ANSI-ANAB are underwriters. We have a government contract in here, which means that they take full legal responsibility of all those other accreditation bodies that sit on the IAF, which is a repository for all these accreditation bodies like UKAS, who also accredited Kobe Steel, that fudge documentation. And you have others, Accredia, which now I think an Italian gentleman has taken over the control of the IAF. But sitting also on the IF, who are equivalent in accreditation to ANAB, that means that they can do audits here and be fully recognized because they are equivalent to ANAB, is Iran and Pakistan. I do not say this about the Iranian people, nor do I say this about the Pakistanis, but I do say this about the government. The government is shit, and I'm going to tell you why. Because they admitted to harboring some of the terrorists of 9/11. So your certificate up on the wall by ANAB is tantamount to 9/11. And I don't mean to say that just lightly, but think about it. They are equivalent in accreditation to ANAB. The problem is that they also admitted to harboring some of the terrorists of 9/11, in Pakistan, as a matter of fact, harbored Osama bin Laden. This is the actual government contract that I'm talking about, one of the many. Federal contract, government, 2018. Remember, Zhao Jinwu was the chairman of the IAF from 2015 to 2021. And remember this, his whole mantra is the China National Intelligence Law, Article number 7, hack the data, take the data. That's what we have to do. So here you go on this contract. Okay, you can look it up. This is the actual, a piece of the contract that states, and I quote, that ANAB or ANSI-ANAB is an underwriter for the International Accreditation Forum. Here's a couple corporations and fellow agencies that are affected by ANAB's underwriter. Okay, and they are underwriters. You have, of course, ANSI sitting on, you also have ANSI or ANAB sitting on ANSI's board. You also have the factor that they were both sitting on the IAF between 2015 and 21, probably filtering information, probably, possibly, could be, maybe, giving information to Communist China, because after all, Randy handed over leadership to the IAF, an American-based company in Delaware, and here it is. ANSI took over complete control over ANAB in 2018. ANSI-ANAB has 10 different registrars, 10 different registrars in Communist China. Given the information, isn't it nice? Cybersecurity like NIST SP800, ISO 27001, 27013 for cybersecurity. It's basically impotent because of the associations of collusion and interlocking directorates, but we're going to show you this. Harvard University was queried about this guy, a professor, head of the chemistry department, concerning the COVID virus manufacturer. And here he is, Mr. Charles Lieber. I bring him into play here because Harvard University said, I don't know. Why don't they know? Because China gives them a lot of cash, So here's Charles Lieber. When COVID hit, the FBI arrested him. You don't really hear too much about him. And here's his Chinese talent plan. He's getting about $1.5 million for being part of the Chinese talent plan, where if you don't know what that is, the Chinese go around because they know that Americans are built, well, we're more, how should we say, more well-versed in education, a wide scope of education, while the Chinese are very good at what they do, very centered. You know, you give them a task, they'll do it, and they'll do it well. In America, you're more liberal arts education, and that's what the Chinese come to different educational institutions, Ivy League schools, taking the creme de la creme, the intellectuals. And by the way, Charles Lieber is a specialist in nanotechnology, both biological and electronic. And he got a lot of awards from IEEE, which sits on ANSI's board, and also NIH, which you'll see here, also sits on ANSI's board. In 2017, an article came out in this Chinese document. I do have the entire book, so don't think that we made this up. We copied it from something else. And anyway, between May 17th and 19th of 2017, they had the second annual workshop in China in the laboratory. And they were talking about the first gain-of-function research. Now we move over to the United States just about a year ago. Mr. Rand Paul was questioning Daryl Fauci, Mr. Fauci. And Fauci said, I don't know anything about gain of function. We had nothing to do about it, nothing. Well, let me tell you something. He's a bullshitter because it's right here. And this was 2 years before COVID broke. Now we bring Zhao Jinwu back into play. Very special. Here he is standing in the lab at Wuhan, China, handing a laboratory certification. And Zhao Jinwu was at the time the chairman of the IF, an American-based company, of a repository for accreditation bodies. And also, he was the chief executive of the China National Accreditation Services, located in Beijing, China, handing a laboratory cert to this young lady in Wuhan. I did some research and I pulled this and I want to make a copy of it because this is very important. Accredited labs. Failure happens in accredited laboratories. Well, Mr. Marvin Schechter, a lawyer, wrote a report in 2011 to the state of New York stating that ASCLD lab, which is owned by ANAB, ANSI-ANAB, is basically when you get a certificate from them, it's like a badge of honor. Laboratory failure, we have plenty of that information. Then in 2019, I did a video on laboratory accreditation, and I focused in on A2LA, which is an accreditation body, saying that they sit on ANSI's board, and of course they do. A woman from A2LA, Ashley Morton, wrote underneath the video stating that no, A2LA and ANSI are two separate accreditation bodies in America unto themselves. Well, does that look separate? Well, I did it. I did that. I opened up the can of worms concerning laboratory accreditation. Now, while Zhao Jinwu was there standing in the laboratory in Wuhan, China, we had back here's Zhao Jinwu standing in the laboratory 2017. We had a deposition going on here in America, down in Texas, by a Miss Pamela Sale. Pamela Sale is the vice president of accreditation for laboratory accreditation for ANSI-ANAB. She stated, and I'm going to put forensic labs and also phlebotomy labs in there. She said one of the issues, and I'm going to also put worldwide, one of the issues is that there is no commonly agreed upon set of standards that forensic labs around the country have to follow. Instead, there are informal guidelines that labs can choose to follow or not. So that means she basically said that Wuhan, China, the escape of the virus is quite plausible because there are no protocols. To make matters worse, a delegation from the United States went to the Wuhan lab in about 2017, and the scientists there were complaining that they do not have trained personnel to deal with those infectious viruses that can kill you. And they came back with a report. Nobody listened to them. Nobody cared. And guess what? The CDC in 2019 came out with a report. May of 2019, they came out with a report, a training document for China labs. The only laboratory, BioLevel 4, was Wuhan, China, mentioned throughout. There was nothing else. And the most important part of that document was that it said, to keep a laboratory running safely, you have to have quite well-trained individuals. Well, they were complaining, and you have Pamela Sale said that there was no protocol. Now you know she confessed to the escape. When I gave that speech, or I actually did that on the did that concerning A2LA. Mr. Russ Cheney, the chairman and CEO, he's actually the CEO of ANSI at the time, or chairman, he called me up and he left me this message, and I have to play this because I want you to see what ANSI has on their boards. Now, this is a difficult thing, but here it is.
This is Russ Cheney. Please leave a message and I'll return your call as soon as possible. Record your... Return your call as soon as possible. Record your...
Now, what I did was I sent a letter asking for an apology to Joe Bathia. He sent it off their attorney, Jameson Carroll. Don't you think I deserve some sort of apology? Is that their mantra? I guess so, because if Boeing's skipping quality processes, have a not, fuck you. If Boeing airplane going down, you say, what the fuck? I guess that means that quality's no good, per Russ Cheney. And this is what he said. And I'm not going to read it. I will let you read it. In fact, by Russ Cheney being the chairman, all the government agencies' membership board approves what he said. And here it is. Now we continue. Sitting on ANSI's board is the International Aerospace Quality Group, which runs the online aerospace supplier information systems. In 2003, I want you to tell me if this is about quality. They put out a heads up 22, and 4.2 of this specification stated, okay, an AS9100 organization does not have the right to be excluded from the OASIS database. Number 4.3, if an AS9100 certified organization refuses to be entered into the OASIS database, for example, refuses to pay database fees, their AS9100 certificate will be taken away by the accreditation body or the registrar. And this came off PRI concerning that type of certification, saying that if they don't, if they're not on the OASIS database, they will be taken off. We go to Boeing now. We're going to show you this. We're going to show you why quality is out of control. We're going to show you why having a certificate from ANAB, they said it's probably yes. So you, ladies and gentlemen, who have an ANAB accredited cert, DNV, BVQI, ABS, DQS, all the rest of that, NSF, NQA, if you have that, Perry Johnson, if you have that and it's ANAB accredited, you got to scratch your head. But I know what you're going to say. Oh, Daryl, I'm pay to play, pay to play. We saw what happened with AOG pay to play. I am sure they probably were certified by UKAS because England and UKAS are very much involved. I am sure they are. Well, look at UKAS. They certified Kobe Steel, fudging documentation. What is that all about? So we have Boeing. Boeing, Boeing, Boeing. If it's Boeing, don't get going. It's a shame to say that. And I don't say that for the personnel, please. My heart goes out for you because you're a guy from all the way up the top, all the way down. Listen, Dennis Muhlenberg wasn't good, and neither is David Calhoun. The only thing Dave knows about quality is touching the aircraft engine at GE. Unbelievable. This was a bulletin from 2002. This states basically that if you're AS9100 certified for aerospace, then you can forget. Don't worry about it. We're not going to send it, at Boeing, we're not going to send you any more internal auditors, to look at your processes. Just send us your ISO certificate 9001 AS9100, and you can send us your parts. Flight safety doesn't matter. In 2009, you had the FAA succeed inspection to ANAB. To Boeing. The reason why is, I guess, because the FAA sits on ANSI right over by Boeing. Basically, they succeeded inspection. Now you have quality issues, not only with the 737 MAX, but the 757, 777, 787. If you want that data, we got it. You know what they need? They need a guy like me to run that company, honestly. because David is probably playing golf as I give this video to you. And Boeing sits on ANSI's board. Another thing is this. This is unbelievable. This is still on their supplier portal. It states a certification body is accredited for these quality management systems by ANSI-ANAB, National Accrediting Board, international or internationally equivalent. And as I told you, the internationally equivalent could be Iran, Pakistan, and Boeing is calling that out. And they sit on ANSI's board. And here it is. If you don't believe me, here are some of the articles about Boeing cutting corners, also fudging documentation. We go to Lockheed Martin. Lockheed's a blast. Lockheed Martin, isn't that a tender moment? They're on their 801st ship, still getting rejections. I would say after ship number 3 or 4, they should have got a lot of these issues done. But now it's still the quality that they have, and they sit on ANSI's board using ANAB accreditation. I have a letter from them that said we only use ANAB accredited accreditation bodies. In 2015, we tried to warn Lockheed that they were being watched over by China in 2015, and they put a deaf ear to that. What do you want? They sit over by Iran and Pakistan on the IAF. That didn't surprise me. And here, they sit on ANSI's board. In 2009, Lockheed Martin gets hacked by China. A report comes out, a federal report, Inspector General, stated this. Listen to this. Now, they sit on ANSI's board, right over by the accreditation body that they shove down your throat. And also, the IF, the International Accreditation Form. Here it is. The F-35 program do not sufficiently implement or flow down technical and quality management system requirements and go for the fielding of nonconformity hardware and software. This adversely affected aircraft performance, reliability, maintainability, and ultimately program cost. Lockheed Martin and its subcontractors did not follow specified AS9100 quality management system practices, as evident by the 719 issues and 363 findings. Now, you heard what that meant. If you're accredited by ANAB, it's exemplary. You call that exemplary? Oh my God. And then we have United Technologies at that time sitting on ANSI's board. United Technologies in 2012, you have Lockheed gets hacked in 2009. You have in 2012, now United Technologies gets hacked by China, taking Sikorsky's data. In 2015, Lockheed Martin goes to buy Sikorsky for $9 billion. And this came off the Connecticut Mirror. With China's okay, Lockheed Martin closes in on the purchase of Sikorsky aircraft. You have the factor, but Connecticut, now you have Rosa DeLauro, Jim Himes, Chris Murphy, and also Richard Blumenthal. Now you have 4 representatives in this state, ladies and gentlemen, watching over 3.6 million people, which means it's 900,000 people each look over. Statistically, they can't do it. Morally, they can't do it. They're just collecting a paycheck to buy a new suit, a new dress, new purple hair. And this is basically what it broke down to right over here. The first is, but Connecticut lawmakers praise Lockheed Martin for clearing its last regulatory hurdle, Communist China. And this is what it should have said. Connecticut lawmakers Rosa DeLauro, Richard Blumenthal, Christopher Murphy, and Jim Himes praise our #1 military contractor, Lockheed Martin, for working with Communist China. Those are the real words. People say to me, Daryl, how do you say that they hacked Sikorsky and got the Black Hawk? How did they hack Lockheed Martin? Right over here, ladies and gentlemen. Right here. I don't need to go into details with this flow chart. Now we come on to the medical side of it that sits on ANSI's board. You got Johnson & Johnson. Johnson & Johnson, a wonderful organization, isn't it? But look what they did. Actually, it's not 60 million, it's 75 million. They too sit on ANSI's board, right over by the FDA, right over by the CDC, NIH, all the rest of that. This is a good one too. Pfizer. Now, this is a strange one because Albert Bourla, the CEO and veterinarian extraordinaire, didn't roll up his sleeve to take that first initial vaccine. He had vaccine hesitancy. He also said when being interviewed by Megan Terrell, from that time it was MSNBC, he said this. He sounds like Boris, he sounds like Bela Lugosi. I want to tell you, it was made in the sun. It was made with quality. We didn't skip processes. We did it. We made it in the sun. It's a good vaccine. I wouldn't take it though, but it's a good vaccine. Well, I added it. I wouldn't take it because as that video goes on, and you'll probably find it down below, his interview, very short, 3 minutes, he said, I wouldn't take it. I'm a 59-year-old man. While the CDC had on their website that if you're a 50-year-old man, you should take the vaccine because it will stop you from going to the hospital. And when he says trust science, when he says that vaccine was made in quality, take a look at this article. Pfizer skipped critical testing and cut corners on quality standards, documents reveal. What the hell is that? You know who sits there too protecting ANSI? The Department of Justice. We know about justice, don't we? And if a plane goes down, you know who else sits there? Right over by Boeing and Lockheed? Oh, isn't this a tender moment? The Department of Transportation. Here's the FDA. You think about collusion, ladies and gentlemen? It's only getting better. The USDA. The CDC, who also has a branch in Communist China. The NIH, who also has a branch in Communist China. The Federal Trade Commission, where Mr. Alan Freeman told us probably about 4 years ago, Daryl, there's only 4 people in our department and we have to handle 10,000 complaints a week. For 4 people? That sounds like our politicians here. Oh, unbelievable. And then you have the Department of Defense. And the best one I saved for last. You have Mr. Christopher Wray, who said on November 22nd, 2022, he said, we must maintain vigilance over Communist China and get rid of TikTok out of your telephones because that's run by China. And guess what? The FBI was on there being watched over by China. Every one of these organizations and corporations have gotten their data taken by China. And the last one is this. ILAC, the acronym for that is Laboratory Accreditation Credible, ILAC. For IAF, we already know what that is. It always fails. Now, I'm going to read you this letter. But beforehand, I want to let you know, I put in 2022, in June, I put in a 54-page document for ANSI, thinking that I, Daryl Guberman, could go in there and clean them up because I don't like their mantra, do you? Half a nut, fuck you. But all the quality failures you see throughout this, that mantra stays. Russ Cheney was not lying. He was true. The worst thing is nobody ever put in a document like this with ANSI. I know for sure. In fact, one of the ANSI members called me and said, Daryl, nobody put in a booklet like that ever. So at the end of the booklet, okay, I had to answer 9 questions, all the rest of this, fill it out. At the end, take a look who's at the bottom. The chairman of the nominating committee is Russ Cheney, the guy who said, have a nut, fuck you. Isn't that a tender moment? So I'm going to read this and complete it. This is what he said, this quality professional. Daryl, thank you. My respect for ANSI-ANAB went out the window after watching your videos. The evidence of their complete betrayal of quality principles disgusted me. Remember what I showed you. Lockheed, Boeing, Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer. Those are only some. How about AOG Technics, fudging documentation and sending it off, getting it into airplane engines? The evidence of their complete betrayal of quality principles disgusted me. I am just an obscure ISO 9002 certified auditor, but I am very proud of that, and I consider it an honor. ANSI-ANAB has portrayed such a nonchalant attitude toward folks who value quality management. You are the right man to expose them. You have so much more experience in auditing, and this goes. And that letter also pertains to Jack, also to my dear friend and cousin Merdad, and so many other quality professionals out there who take their job seriously. And you can see it at every ASQ meeting. A vice president never shows up of quality, but the quality inspectors and some managers all show up. Why? Because those guys are probably playing golf. My telephone number, 203-556-1493. I apologize for this, but this is my deposition. To anyone who wants to take me on, ANSI and ANAB, they already tried, and they failed. I thank you. This is Daryl Guberman.